Hi, and welcome to Stamping with Stro. Today I'm going to show you how to create one of these lovely books. One day I was searching on Pinterest and I saw this written out tutorial on how to create your own book by binding it, sewing it, gluing it, and I thought, well, that's a pretty cool idea. I had seen a couple of journals that I had liked, but I didn't want to spend the money on making them for just little doodling pads and idea journaling for the summer, what the kids are doing, anything that you might want to do. So I went ahead and followed the tutorial and I created a couple of books. As you can see here, I know they're very close. They have a little closure, and I just thought that they were really neat and a really cool gift to give to somebody, and they're really super easy to make. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I created that. Okay, so what I started off with was I went to the craft store. I love Stampin' Up's cardstock, but it's a little bit thick for a journal, or even if you're doing one of those smash books or anything like that. It's just a little bit too heavy duty. If you're doing more of a scrapbook, I would suggest using the cardstock or Whisper White cardstock. But I went and I just bought a package of their of just drawing paper, and I measured mine out, and this is a 12-inch by 9-inch piece of paper. And all I did was I went ahead and I followed this tutorial that I found, and basically it said to bundle your paper into stacks of 5 sheets, and then once you get your 5 sheets, you fold them in half, and so that's what I'm going to do here. So I just folded them in half, and I really wanted mine to have a homemade look, and so I really didn't get too particular. As you can see, you know, it's not really very straight. They're not perfectly folded. I wanted to give it that, you know, homemade feel, I guess, not perfect. And so I just folded mine in half like that. You can use the Stampin' Up! Simply Scored, which would be perfect too, and you could score your sheets of paper so that they were perfectly scored. But for this, I just folded it in half. And so when you're all done, you should have 5 sheets of paper, all folded in half, and then you'll bundle them up into stacks. And my books I did, see here's multiple stacks, there's 3 there. In my books I did 6 stacks of 5. So you'll get 60 sheets of paper in there, or pages, once you fold it in half. So in order to now get this book to bind, what I had to do is go, and I obviously knew that this was 9 inches. I don't know if you can see that. So I measured it out, 9 inches across, and so then I need to make my my holes so that I could actually bind the book. And so I just measured 1.5 inches in on both sides, and then 1.5 inches from there. So I marked one piece of paper and I used that as a template. And then I went ahead and I poked holes in there. So I don't know if you can see my holes there. And I just used one sheet as a template, and then I went through and I marked all of my pages that way. And again, it wasn't perfect, so some of the pages aren't aligned the same way. But for what I was going for, I wasn't too particular, but you could be a lot more particular when you're doing it and measure out each one so that they're perfectly lined up and the holes will match. So once you're done with that and you have all the holes punched in your paper, you will go ahead and you will start to bind your book. So this, I actually used some of our baker's twine and a needle. Let's see if I can get that here. And so I just used, here's our Island Indigo baker's twine. So obviously I would just tie off the end here, and I made a couple knots just to make sure. And so your first sheet is fairly simple. You're just going to go, it can be, you know, the top, let's see here, let me back up, the top or the bottom or whichever. You just need to start at one of the end holes. And so you're going to go through all 5 sheets of paper, and you're just going to bring that through, and it's basically you're just threading through. So then you're going to come back up. I don't know if you can see that, and you're just going to tighten that there. So now you have the first right here is where you started. So now you're here. And then you're going to go across and you're just basically going to go back and forth sewing or threading your book. I kind of have, there we go. And so you're just going to tighten that. And so then that's what the top of the book looks like. Here, let me flip that. So that's what the top one will look like. So now you have to connect the rest of your sheets. So now you have your ending here. You're going to get your next grouping and you're just going to start all over and you're going to start at the bottom. Let's see if I can. And because they're not perfectly lined up, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get it all matched up. But you're going to go from the same end that you ended, you're going to start with that end so that you have, so they meet. And you're just going to sew back up and again do what you had done on the previous. Let's see, my not lined up. There we go. So again, I'm just going to sew through here and here. So what I did, because once you start adding your pages or your groups of pages, you want to make sure that it stays tight. See how that's kind of loosened? That's not tight anymore, so you got to kind of tighten that. So now you have your 2 pages, or your 2 sets. So what I went ahead and did is I used clothespins. And I just put a clothespin on each end. And once I got towards the end, I put one in the middle to kind of keep that tight there too. So each time you add a group of 5, you just undo the clothespin at an end, and then you can clip it back on. So now I'm going to show you. So you're just going to go through, so as many groupings of 5 that you want. You can do 3, you can do 2, you can do 5, you can do 6. However big you want your book to be, it's up to you. But once you get to the end here, so you'll finish off. So this is my last grouping. Okay, so now that I have my needle threaded on here, so basically what you want to do is you want to tie this off so that it doesn't come apart. So you're going to find where there was the loops. If you remember back here, there was the loop right here. You're basically going to tuck the needle into that little loop. And then you're going to just knot it, tie a knot. Oops, you got to be careful of the clothespins. So I just do that a couple of times just to make sure it's good and tied in there so that it doesn't come apart. And here's kind of the tricky part. You got to kind of thread it through this middle, well, not tricky, but get it through that middle clothespin, because now you need to make sure you get this other side. So again, I'm just going to pull this through. You have to obviously go in at an angle. It's easier to get the needle. Like I said, you just want to tie it all off, and so once you get that done, you're ready to get out the hot glue gun and start gluing the binding all together. So I'm going to finish this off and I'll be back with the hot glue gun. Okay, now I have my glue gun all ready. So again, we have our clothespins on the 3 sides, and all we're going to do here is we're going to take our hot glue, and I'm just going to go across the seam here and just glue all these pieces together. So just like a book, you want to make sure all your pieces or all your bundles are glued together. So you just go all the way down, and then you take your paper clips off, or your clothespins off, sorry, and then you would have this. So as you can see, I have that all the way glued with hot glue. So once you get to this point, then what you'll do is now you're going to put on your cover. So you're going to get a piece of cardstock, And mine, because of my paper, you can kind of see here. Let me get that out there. This is actually 3 inches by 9 1/8 inch. And then I scored it at 1 1/8 inch and then again at 1 7/8 inch, so that I have those already scored. And all I'm going to do here is in that middle section, it's kind of hard to see, is I'm just going to take the glue gun and I'm just going to squiggle hot glue all the way down. And then I'm going to take my book and I'm just going to set it in there. Now, depending on how many bundles and groups and how big your paper is, you may want to measure and figure out how wide your book is or how thick your book is so that you can score it at the right and appropriate measurements. But for this size book, those are the measurements that I have. So once you have that on there, then you can go ahead and add your covers. And so I have one here that I've done. And so you'll cut 2 sheets of cardstock. So this is 5 3/4 inch by 9 1/8 inch. You'll need one for the front and one for the back. When you do the back, here I adhered my baker's twine so that I have my closure. So I used a little glue dot on the back before I used my Tombow glue and glued that on, and again glued on the front. And I wanted a clasp for that twine, so I went ahead and punched a hole and put a little circle, 1/2 inch circle there, so that you have something. This will wrap around, come around like that. So there's your closure. And again, all I used was the multi-purpose glue, which I'll show you here. So I'm going to take my Tombow multi-purpose glue and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here on the edge of my spine that I put on there. And then I'm going to take, like I said, my 9 1/8 by 5 3/4 sheet of paper, and I'm just going to line it up here. And you want to make sure it covers the edge of your paper as well in the front. You got to be careful your glue placement. Sometimes it gets out there a little bit. So I actually used Designer Series paper on this one, just to give it a different look. So there's that, just simple and easy, the Tombow glue. And again, you'll do that on the back side. Now you're going to want to do the inside cover also. So what I did, I've already done one side here, and again you're just going to take the Tombow glue and you're going to glue it down on one side, let it dry. And I always put it on, and this is the Designer Series paper, you could use cardstock, whatever you wanted to cover on the inside. And what I do is I just put some glue on there and then I just shut it. It doesn't quite line up exactly, but it just is easier to do it that way, so that you're not trying to line something up. And I see, as you can see, it doesn't quite match up. But because we didn't exactly measure out when we first did this, that is why that kind of ends up that way. But to me, you still have the cover. It covers the seam in the back there. And then you'll do that again in the front with your other sheet of paper. And this is 12 inches by the 9 1/8 inch. So again, you'll just glue that down and then you're all set. Well, I hope you enjoyed my very first video tutorial, and I hope that you learn how to make your own book and that you try it out. Here are a couple samples. So here is a finished product of what I did today. And I embellished it with a bookmark here that I made. Since the designer paper has enough on its own, so I just did a little bookmark here that you can take on and off. And here are a couple of the ones that I showed at the very beginning. So let me move this up so you can see. So you can embellish them however you want and make it your own beautiful book to do whatever you want with. Like I said, journaling, scrapbooking, your choice. So you can check out more samples at my blog. Have a good day. Happy crafting.